Good morning. I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Jefferson County Public Utility District Number 1. It's Tuesday, April 25th, 2023, and 10 a.m. The first order of business is to ascertain that we have a quorum of the Board of Commissioners. I'm Kenneth Collins, Commissioner District 2 and Chair of the Board.
Jeff Randall, Commissioner District 1.
Dan Tupper, Commissioner for District 3.
So we have a quorum. Jefferson County is offering virtual online meetings as well as in-person meetings unless advance notice is provided. In-person attendance will be limited to provide sufficient space and masking is encouraged. Online participant audio will be muted upon entry. Please unmute at the appropriate time to speak. If you're calling in, use *6 to mute and unmute and *9 to raise your hand indicating your desire to speak. The next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda itself. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No. I'll make the motion to accept the agenda as presented.
I'll second the motion.
Is there further discussion on the agenda? Hearing none. All in favor of approval of the agenda for this morning's meeting, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. The agenda has been approved, and the first item from the agenda, item number 3, is an executive session. Per RCW 42.30.110, Section 1, subsection A, subsection I, to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency litigation or potential litigation to which the agency may likely become a party when public knowledge regarding the discussion is likely to result in an adverse legal or financial consequence to the agency. How much time will we need?
Kathy, 15, 20 minutes?
Yep, that sounds about right.
So let us say 20 minutes. It's 10:02 now. So we will reconvene at approximately 10:22.
No. She was on it. Yeah. Okay. She should be there.
We have concluded this morning's executive session. And we are now reconvening our special board meeting. Item 4 on the agenda is the manager's report. Mr. Street.
So, real quick, I'm going to do a update on some transformer information that was talked about this last week. The group we met with last week, NRECA, talked about the transformer shortage lasting at least another 2 years, which puts most utilities at a tough place because we've stockpiled transformers. Now, as we try to replace them, they're over a year out. And if they do change some of the new regulatory rules to make the transformers more efficient, that will even compound the problem. So the PUD did get a shipment of 10 transformers last week. These transformers had been on order for almost 2 years. We still have many transformers waiting to be shipped to us that were ordered at the same time these 10 were. We don't have delivery dates. So we continue to be concerned about transformers and other material. I was talking to a contractor today. Even wood poles are 20 to 30 weeks out, which, you know, you look around and you see trees everywhere, but to get wood poles is a challenge. So we will continue to monitor equipment. We will look at alternatives, and in the very near future, we will bring a proposal to increase some of our costs. As our construction costs go up, we need to continually review. You guys have looked at our costs every couple of years anyway. It's nothing new, but that will be coming to the board. And we are looking at either additional ways to extend the material we do have, different construction practices and standards moving forward. So that was a quick update.
So on the poles, can we go to a laminate type pole or a metal pole? I mean, there's a price difference, obviously. Is there options if the poles become unavailable?
Right now,
We seem to have a lot of car versus pole and, you know, poles that are degrading on their own. So I'm just curious of, you know, what our option there would be. We know about the transformers, but the poles is kind of a new one, so.
we are looking, excuse me, we're looking at options. There's different species of pole, different pole treatment. We will probably have to change something there to get a pole quicker. But internally, we have talked about steel and laminate and other options. We're just now, though, Dan, starting to research that, so we don't have much information.
Any rule of thumb about a price difference for, you know, a 80-foot laminate versus an 80-foot transmission for transmission pole?
With today's market, I don't even want to hesitate to guess. They're all going to be quite a bit more expensive than they were 2 years ago.
Commissioner Randall.
I was at the same meeting that Kevin was at when some different people were talking about their utilities around the country and what their situation was. And one of the co-op said that they had just installed their last distribution transformer and they weren't scheduled to get their next one for 2 years. So it makes me ask the question, how many of these transformers do we typically install in a year in terms of just being responsive to either our replacement needs or new development? And do you anticipate a problem at this point in time with us running out of inventory and basically having to tell people we can't approve a new service?
Today, we have a very good inventory in our yard. The board has been very good at letting us purchase additional transformers and other material. So right now, we look pretty good for a year. But now if we have to really wait 2 years before it even gets any better, we're back to where we were several months ago, where we're really going to have to watch it closely. I believe there is a slowdown right now in new construction and new homes. So hopefully that will allow us to carry through. But it's something that we're going to have to monitor very closely, or we will be like other utilities and run out of transformers, and then it shuts down everything in Jefferson County.
And I assume this applies to overhead as well as underground transformers. Is that an equal problem?
Right now, the overheads are a little easier to get, but not much.
So to follow up on that a little bit, just looking forward, listening to what you're saying there, that it's conceivable that we could, hit a wall here with the amount of material we're going to have transformers to do things. Or does the board, are you going to bring a proposal forward to prioritize residential versus commercial versus industrial, about not necessarily first in, first served? If we have to start rationing, for lack of a better term, do we need to do something in policy to start prioritizing how we're going to utilize the transformers that we have available?
In the past, we've always allowed first come, first serve, but as a PUD, we have to keep a minimum of stock so that if there is a car hits a transformer or those things, we have to be able to do repairs.
We had set out to recover used transformers. How successful have we been in doing that?
So we have so far have not recouped any of the used transformers. They're still on site. Scott Bancroft and I talked about it 2 weeks ago, that we're going to issue the letters to the homeowners saying, hey, we're going to come out and remove this equipment unless you start paying. Gene Hall is looking at our idle services. If you look at our idle service policy, she's getting ready. She's identified some things. Just everything ties together. So we're at the point now where we are going to start salvaging used equipment in the field. And that may be the difference to get us by the 2 years.
Additional items in your report?
That was the only thing I wanted to bring to the board's attention. Thank you.
So the next item, number 5, is a vote on acceptance of the minutes for the meeting of April 18th, 2023.
As part of the documents for the RUS loans that we were applying for, we need to have that approved by the board.
Yeah, I didn't see anything in the minutes that looked out of the ordinary or incorrect, so I don't have any issue with the minutes. So I'll make the motion to accept the PUD BOC regular meeting minutes for April 18th, 2023.
I'll second the motion.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion to accept the minutes from our regular board meeting on April 18th, 2023, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Item 6, financial update.
You're free to go.
Either Kevin or Mike.
A true pass off.
Speaking American sign.
I have to move the mic over.
Mike has the mic.
Okay. So just wanted to do a second quarter financial update here today for the board. We've slightly different from what it was originally planned. After last Tuesday's meeting, Kevin and I kind of talked about it a little bit last week, and we kind of changed things up to help answer some of the questions and some of the things that got brought up at last Tuesday's meeting. So some of the things that I was going to talk about, we'll talk about in June as we get ready to start the budget process more, because it applies really to the budget. So this is just the second quarter update. We're going to start with a review and kind of looking at the second quarter forecast here. You can see on our operating revenues for electric and broadband, we're a little over budget. Cost of services, we've saved quite a bit. Part of that's the BPA credits. Part of it's just savings on, not doing jobs. We haven't, luckily it hasn't been a horrible outage season so far. And just other savings that we have done there to save. So our margins are up, and then the non-operating margins, of course, are up. And that's partially because of the reimbursements from grants and everything. The state of Washington makes us require as revenue.
Commissioner.
So on the total cost of service, you mentioned, obviously the BPA revenues return on that, reserves revenue return on that. So have we put off stuff that would normally go into that cost of service that we're going to add on in a different quarter this year?
Well, yes, we have saved some stuff that we're not doing. We've been really conscious of because of cash flow, being worried about that we haven't done some things that, yes, we may do either the summer, the fall, or we may hold off until next year if it's accessible.
Yeah, so I just don't want the public to see that 3 million and think that reserves is just gonna, sit there.
Yeah,
as
no,
a gain reserve.
it's cost savings that we're doing right now, but it could go on. And Commissioner Randall has his hand up too.
Commissioner Randall.
Yeah, thank you. Mike, could you take a couple steps back? 'Cause I looked at this table and I didn't quite understand it. So if you could just start at line 1, operating revenues, and just kind of go through, okay, operating revenues first and second quarter, we've got actuals, budget, variance. And I really didn't understand what forecast, how that related to the two. And I'm not understanding how total cost of service is relating to those things. Could you walk through each one of those boxes and kind of walk through what that means? I'd appreciate it. Thanks.
So the actuals, that's what we've actually made and spent. The budget is what was approved. Then the variance is just the difference between the actuals and the budget. The forecast I added because at the last meeting, Commissioner Tupper mentioned asked about us looking out for the second quarter. So that's what the forecast is looking out at April through June, kind of.
Okay. So for next time, if you could add that forecast for that time period, that would be super helpful. Now, if you could jump down to total cost of service and talk about what that's referring to.
So total cost of service includes our power cost, it includes labor costs, it includes everything, depreciations in there, interest expense, tax expense, anything, whatever it takes to run the utility. As far as expenses, that's what the total cost of service is. It's everything that we spend out to run the utility.
And one more quick follow-up on those actuals operating revenues. How much of the 14 million was grant money for broadband?
None of that. That is the operating revenues is what is our actually doing business. That's our sale of electricity, a little bit of fiber that we have coming in. The 1.4 million in the non-operating margins includes the grant money. And
Okay.
I don't remember exactly what that is in that first quarter.
Yeah, because the header was for electric and broadband. So you
Yeah.
don't have it broken out
No,
on the page.
yeah, anytime that we report the grant reimbursements will be in the non-operating margins. It won't be in the operating revenues. That's just what we do as every day. We sell electricity, we sell fiber. And then the total cost of services, of course, what it costs to make that money. and everything. So, and then the operating margins, that's just the operating revenues minus the total cost of service. That's up a little bit more, but that's the savings on the total cost of service. So is why we're over actuals to budgets there. And of course, the non-operating margins, we didn't have all the grant reimbursements because we don't know when we're going to turn those in.
So it might be useful to look at the total cost of service absent depreciation.
Okay. We can do that for next time. Usually it's about 5 million roughly. Well, that's for the whole year, but it's broken down, month by month but yes, I can take that out or show it separate next time.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Commissioner Randall, you had any questions here?
Yeah, I was just to make a comment on that. And the only danger of that is when you take out depreciation, then it can give you a very rosy look of your budget. And again, the danger of that is if you're not reinvesting in your system to offset your depreciation, you can get caught in a hole where it looks like you're making money, but your whole system is crap because it's been allowed to fall apart and you've got a bunch of depreciated equipment that should have been replaced a long time ago. So that would be my only caution. I wouldn't want us to take depreciation out of our budgeting. I think it's important.
Yeah, my point is to be able to understand the contribution that depreciation makes, so that you have two figures, one with depreciation included, one without, or simply list.
Yeah, we can list
Depreciation.
List depreciation.
I would
separate.
appreciate what you're doing.
Just a fifth column.
Yeah. Yeah, we can definitely do that. And then that, of course, the total margins is the operating margins and our non-operating margins, which is just the two added together. So, that's where our total margins look like, we're making quite a bit of money, and that is, the grant reimbursements add up quite a bit in there, and then just the savings, and then the forecast for this next year, for the next quarter, the next 3 months, our operating revenues, are going to be a little over 10 million. Total cost of service, we're budgeting in, a little over 11 million. So we're losing operating margins. We're losing a little bit, but of course, we're going to be saving some funds. Hopefully, depending on what the weather, April's been, kind of cooler, rainy. That's going to help us hopefully a little bit on revenues. So we should get there. The non-operating margins, they're probably already higher. I know we've gotten a few reimbursements, or we got a few more out there. So that's going to increase, and the total margins overall will increase for the electric and broadband. So
Okay.
the next slide here, as soon as it works, is the same thing. I'll correct them. This one's just for the water side of things, though. Oops. And I'll do the same thing that we talked about for the electric next time. Is to show them, but it's the same concept here where we're showing the actuals for the first quarter, for the first 3 months, the budget for the first 3 months, and then the variance between the two, and then the forecast for April through June. Here, operating revenues, it's 9.4, we're just under $1 million. Budgeted, 1.1 million. Cost of service, it's been up a little over $1 million. Budgeted, just under, so we're over budget there.
And on this one and on the last one too, just one more point of clarification on the budgeted amount. Does that take into the capital work that we have scheduled
No.
order or anything like that?
No,
So
this
capital
is
work
separate. This is only on the income statement, which is the revenues and expenses. And I think Commissioner Randall had his hand up too.
Commissioner,
Yeah, and I don't know how much this is just playing into the fact that it's the winter and people aren't using that much water if it's too early to get concerned, but both the revenues are below budget and the expenses being above budget, it's a little cause for concern. I guess it's a couple $100,000 that we're off already for the start of the year. So this is good. This is good. It's very interesting to monitor it this way. But on the electric side, the variance is to the positive. We're under expense and over revenue, and on the water side, we're or the opposite. And maybe the difference is those BPA payments. Who knows? But very, very good, good chart. Really helpful.
So part of the reason, and then this was part of what going into the discussion originally a plan, and we'll go into it more in June. It's just the way we budget the water revenues, when we use the different tiers, trying to figure out where and how the tiers the different block rates match in there and which ones to use. So that's a little bit of where the difference in the water revenues is coming from, is how those are calculated. Cause I usually just have the whole amount, not the broken down by rates, by the different rates classes. So did that. So yeah, we are a little bit lower.
Mike, would you just touch a pinch on kind of because of this, some of the new budgeting things you're talking about doing for next year's budget?
Yeah, so, and we'll go into this more in depth in June, but we're gonna try to look at getting ourselves by the different blocks. So when we go to budget, it's a little bit easier to budget by the block rates. Electricity, there's not a big gap between the two, between all the different blocks. Where water, there's a big gap. There's a big difference between the different blocks and stuff. So it makes it, when you try to use an average or a median number, it can make a big difference on the water side of things. So that's where part of that comes into play.
By blocks, you're talking about
The block rates, the tiers. We have the 4 different rates for water.
Yes, that's what I'm asking.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, is using those, trying to fit those into the budget process. So
Mhm.
to be a little bit more accurate on it. So, and there again, we're starting to get some refund or the money back from the Quilcene water tank loans. That's where the non-operating margins are up, 700,000, because we did get one reimbursement. We just got another one in yesterday on it. So there again, for the forecast for the non-operating margins is going to go up in the next 3 months. So we are starting to get those reimbursements in. So that's where it's helping to push those total margins up on those. So that's where we're at on the financials, the income, the revenues and expenses for the first quarter, and then looking forward to the second quarter. And then of course, we kind of talked about the long-term debt. So this one I've shown a couple of times, so just update it. This is our current outstanding long-term debt with the outstanding principals as of March 31st, because we've paid down on a couple of them. So just to show that we still have about $93.5 million in current outstanding debt, which over the next few years, each one gets paid down a little bit. In fact, we get pay off one this year. In 5 years, we'll have about 1.4, a little under 1.5 million paid off. And, so it's over the next 20 years, 90 million will be paid off. And then 22 years, all of this will be paid off. So we still got a long ways to go on a few of these. So this is just because there were some questions and some talk about debt last meeting. Just wanted to bring this back up to kind of show what we have outstanding there.
Kevin, how long ago was the purchase of the tri-area portion of Quimper from the city of Port Townsend, the transfer of water assets?
I don't know.
I want to say it was around 2007
Yeah, I was gonna say
is when I think,
5-ish.
I want to say it was around 2007 is when all that was completed.
I didn't see Bill. Sam was on. Do you know Sam? Put you on the spot.
I'm looking it up right now. I just pulled that. I want to say it was 2000, but let me check and I will be right back.
It was early 2000s. So
Okay.
Yeah,
it's
I was
enough.
still with the city. It was a little earlier. So yeah, the early 2000s sounds right.
So yeah, so this is just, this is probably one of the things we'll bring up every so often too, as we do those reviews, just to show out there what we're doing, especially as we're paying down, because we pay our US quarterly. A lot of the other ones we pay annually. So they haven't been made, the payments haven't been made on them yet. And then just looking at some of the new long-term debt that we are talking about. We've either just approved, which was the RUS loan for the 5.43 million for the Auto Street building purchase, the advanced meter project. Interest rate, we're guessing around 4% with a term about 25 years. And then
There are documents that have to be signed, I believe, by the president and the secretary. Any idea of when we need to do that?
I think Joel, I'm gonna let Joel weigh in here because he is still working. on
Had to
some
be
of those.
notarized too.
Yeah, we were supposed to get final documents yesterday. I didn't receive them yesterday. I haven't received them today. We're all ready to go. And yes, Commissioner, we'll need to notarize, so they'll have to be done at the office
Yeah, we have.
in person for, I think, the secretary's certificate, but I'll take another look at all that before we execute.
Commissioner Randall?
So just the chat, Samantha said the water purchase was completed in December of 2001. And then the question I had relates to the RUS Energy Savings Program for 5 million, which Mike hasn't gotten to. But when you do get to that, Mike, if you could just talk about, because that loan is a 0% interest and it's a 20-year payback, how the payback works on that? Are we going to pay it back per year as a regular loan, or is it just a lump sum at the end of 20 years? We got to send 5 million back to them. That's one question. And the second question is, are we going to show that cash as being restricted funds so that we don't somehow think that we've got an extra 5 million in the bank and then get to the end of the day and we've got to return 5 million or re-up the loan, or however that works?
Yes, we'll get into that right now. If there's no other questions on the RUS. Oh, I think Joel, that was still from the question.
Yeah, that's my assumption.
Yep. So yeah, the next one that we're looking at is the RUS Rural Energy Savings Program. This is the $5 million loan that we're gonna lend out, start up an energy efficiency upgrade loan program. The interest rate to the PUD is 0%. The 20-year payback is basically a 20-year loan. The payback that we can give to the customer owners is not 20 years. I think it's 10 years is the maximum that they can go out on, but the PUD has 20 years to pay back the loan. And yes, those funds will be restricted. Basically, we'll pay out of the general fund and then reimburse ourselves. We'll transfer the money over back to cover the loans that we pay out.
Commissioner?
And on those loans, if a customer were to default on one, how are we going to allow for that scenario?
Well, they will be tied to their accounts. We still have some of the process, all the fine details to work out. We're waiting on getting the finalization of the loan. They're still working with Joel. We got to get with Joel, who has his hand. I have gonna weigh in here probably too on how to handle some of those. Joel?
Yeah, thanks. Typically what we want to do is we want to not operate as a bank or finance company, and the loan should be tied to the meter. And so we'd establish some sort of tariffed rate for the loan improvements, whether it be a heat pump, solar installation, increased insulation, windows and the like, whatever's in the program. Those costs are to be paid back over a 10-year period to the PUD. And then we essentially collect those and pay them back to RUS, or recirculate those in the community, however the program's set up. But I'd recommend that we use kind of a tried and true method of tying the cost to the meter, the payback to the meter, so that if someone fails to pay it and home goes into foreclosure, or the renter leaves or whatever it is, that the costs continue on through the actual meter payment.
And there will be a small interest charge. I think we talked about doing 2% to the customer who borrowed the money. That helps pay for the program that we're going to do.
So when it's tied to the meter, Joel, that functions in a way that's comparable to a lien on the property?
Ken, it's specifically set up to not be a lien on the property, but it functions in the same exact way, so that we own the meter, we charge for service through that meter, and it spans whomever the underlying customer is. So it has the same effect. And, there's losses that occur, I'm sure, but when you look over throughout the country for this program, and it's pretty well established these days, those losses are pretty minimal in terms of failure to pay.
Understood. Thank you. Commissioner
One
Cooper.
more quick question on that one again, refresh. So do we get to set a threshold for how much we'll loan based on the ability of the customer's financial history to pay it back? How did that work one more time?
So we're not going to base it off. We're going to base it off of their history with the PUD. They have, their account history with us. Not looking, because like Joel said, we don't want to get into a lending institution, anything where we have to then follow more stringent guidelines, laws and rules and stuff. So we're going to look at their history with us. And as long as they have good payment history with us, then we will. And the thresholds, there will be some thresholds on as far as the amounts that we will lend out to one individual.
And Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think all of this will be set up in the program that ultimately the commissioners authorize. So there'll be like a schedule of products and time, and and then staff will go through an evaluation.
Quick question, and then I'll recognize Commissioner Randall. When someone applies for an account, an electric account with the PUD, do we routinely do a credit check?
We used to do kind of.
Yes, we do. Sorry, I couldn't find my mute button. If they don't have a history with the PUD, we do run a credit check, but it is a soft credit check. It does not check income. It mostly checks for red flags on the Social Security and utility payment history.
Thank you.
Isn't it more based on their past utility history, Gene?
Through OUE, yes, that's the company we use, Online Utility Exchange. So if their previous utility reports to OUE their history, then they have it. We do not report credit history to OUE. So if a customer was with us and moved elsewhere, their credit history wouldn't follow them through that. So it's not as accurate as, say, an Experian credit check would be.
Commissioner Randall. Thank you, Gene. Commissioner Randall.
I just wanted to provide some more context too. It's important to remember that the energy savings program, that service is intended that when somebody takes advantage of it and installs something in their home, ideally it's going to reduce their energy costs. So we may even see people on an annualized basis that they put in insulation, they put in a more heat pump instead of the electric resistance heating. They may end up, ideally they end up with a lower annual bill. So I think that's one of the reasons why the repayment is such a high success rate, and it's based over a monthly basis. So I suppose there may be some people that they're putting in something that's more efficient, and then they end up using more energy because now their house can be more comfortable. But I would think that the increases in costs when they occur should be modest. And I bet with a lot of cases, we're actually going to see them having a lower annual bill.
All right. Then moving on to the next one is the RUS Reconnect loan for $4.6 million. This is to help with the fiber build out in Southeast Jefferson County. Get an interest rate around 4% with a term of about 24 years. I did forget to put one on here that I thought of this morning. The broadband downtown project.
I was gonna ask you.
That's about $1.8 million with a 0.42% interest rate over 15 years. So that's another new long-term debt for the electric and broadband.
Can remind me again, where is that money coming from?
That is with the
State
state.
Works Board.
Yeah.
Public Works. Thank you.
So those are just some new, that within the next year, all the documents will be signed. And so either later, depending on when everything's done, we could see some payments later this year. Or it could be within the next couple of years that we would have to start seeing payments on these loans as well. So they will be added to the other chart as we go through that we did. So just wanted to bring that up. That's for the new long-term debt for electric and broadband. We do have a couple of new long-term debts for the water. We have a public works board loan for about why does that keep doing? For $2.4 million. This is the Quilcene water tank project. Interest rate is 0.94%. Term is 20 years on that. That one we have started getting some draws down on, reimbursing us. We also have a Washington State drinking water state revolving loan for 1.1 million, which is for the Coyle water line replacement project. That interest rate is 2.25% with a 20-year term. Another one I forgot to put on there, I thought of this morning was we do have the Shine Plat LED number 17. Don't remember all the costs on that one, but that one will be paid through assessment. So we will get money to help pay for that one. So that one is more of a pass-through loan than us actually taking the loan out and having to pay for it out of revenues.
So what's the total then of borrowing? There was 1.8 plus, I think it's 600,000 on the plat. So
I think so.
2.5 million added to what was the total?
Yeah, added 2.5 million there, but that one will be, a lot of that will be passed through assessments and stuff. So we will receive the LUD. Yes. They will pay for it themselves. So just wanted to, kind of let you guys know about some different loans that were coming out. So moving on here, kind of showing you what some of the electric payments that are going to be long-term debt payments coming out for both principal and interest for the electric side. Right now, it's just more the 2023 through 26 is just the RUS debt that was to purchase the system. Then kind of showing you how the new debt, if we add everything together, kind of what it would cost us additionally over the next 4 years. That's if we take the loan out in June 1st. I just had to pick a date and just pick June 1st to try to get some amortizations done. So
Yeah, but taking into account the downtown one in particular, I know that the first year was a minimal, it ramps up and then it's like 300,000 a year by, I think, 2025.
since I didn't remember that one when I first did all the other numbers, that payment's not included in these charts, but it will be updated for the next time. So just to, trying to let the board know what payments are going to look like over the next few years on principal and interest for the electric side of things. Same thing here with the water side. Here's our existing debt payments, for 2023 through 2026. That's all the new ones. And then the new loans starting in, except for the Shine Plat LUD through, the next 4 years, if we start taking and have to pay back June 1st. So those are just the additional payments that are going to be coming up over the next 4 years, depending on, when everything's finalized and repayments start.
So I got a notice the other day in my email that the USDA has funding for rural communities to improve water and wastewater infrastructure. We're aware of that.
Yes.
Great.
So then the next thing, of course, is, we always talk about the cash flow. So just wanted to kind of show year in 2022 and through March, kind of how the change in our cash flows. You can see, we had a big influx in January, but that was because we got 1.7 I think it was 1.1, 1.7, I think in reimbursements. Grant reimbursements in January. Spent a little of that money, we spent money in February. Got reimbursements in March, and that kind of brought us back up. Doing it. So that kind of just shows how our cash flow has been going through. The next one here is kind of Commissioner Randall asked about the restricted and the non-restricted cash. So just kind of showing the difference in how things have changed over the last 3 months in our restricted and unrestricted cash. You can see the big change in restricted cash in March. That's because we used restricted cash to pay off or to make a loan payment. So that's where the 175,000 we made a debt payment that had a fund set aside just for it. It was actually, I think it was lead 14, the Maristone. We paid in March, the bond, and they have their money. So you can see how the assessments help make some of those payments. So just wanted to kind of show how the cash balances between the restricted and non-restricted funds. And we'll see an increase in our restricted cash balances as we get some of those loan funds from RUS in there. They'll be set up as restricted cash and then move from restricted to non-restricted as we go through and reimburse ourselves.
Commissioner.
So on the 1.6 million part of the RUS loan we're getting for the meters in the building, are we going to consider the 1.6 part of that for the building as restricted or
No,
unrestricted?
that one it'll go in restricted because all the money will come in at one time, but then we'll move it to non-restricted to reimburse ourselves for the money that was already paid out. Plus, we'll go ahead and look at what we've paid out for the meters and reimburse ourselves up to date on the meter costs. So we could be around, I think it's been a while since I looked, but we could be around probably, I would say $2.5 million, probably 2.5, maybe even closer to 3, that once we get that loan all finalized and receive the funds, that would go into the non-restricted cash balance. So we would see a big increase there too. And then of course, we always talk about tier on our electric side of things. So just wanted to kind of show how we've ended through 2017 to 2022. You can definitely see our tiers going up. Part of that is because of the auditors had me record some of the receivables.
I want to back up, Mike, ask you one more time again on the money that we're going to get reimbursed for the building, because it is a loan and we are going to be paying it back. Is that something we should consider putting into restricted reserve?
No, because that was to pay for the building.
Right, but we're going to be paying interest on that money now that otherwise was just cash. So
Either way, we would be paying interest on it. Once we draw all the funds down, the interest starts from the day that we draw the funds. So whether it's restricted and non-restricted basically just means if it's restricted, we can only use it for certain things. Most of our restricted cash is for debt payments through LUDs, or their bond covenants is where we have to keep so much in reserves in case something should fail. We have to help pay for it. So and the non-restricted cash, we can use it for basically almost anything there is.
okay, just wanted to be clear if we had an option on that or not.
Yeah, so we'll be paying interest as soon as we draw down the funds in one way or the other, where they're put at, whether restricted or non-restricted, it doesn't matter. It's just where and how we can use them.
Sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. So yeah, going on to the tier, just kind of showing our year end 2017 to 2022 tier, kind of showing how things change, interest changes to margins. We are going to see some higher tiers over the next couple of years. Part of the reason we ended up with a 4.76 tier at the end of 2022 is the money that we received in January. The auditors actually had us put it in as revenue and as a receivable for 2022, because that's when the expenses were incurred and that we were receiving repayment for. So that kind of bumped the bottom line up, bumped everything else up. So, but that was their call to make us do that. So, and then RUS, the 2 out of the 3 highest year average that's what RUS looks at on the loan covenants. They look at our two out of the three highest last years and take the average, the 2-year average. So that's kind of showing the nut through 19 through 2022, what the 2 out of 3 year average is, high average is. And that's what RUS looks at.
So do you have the data to project where the tier is going 2023 and 2024?
I don't right offhand, but I can get that for you. I mean, a lot of it until we budget, it's harder to do. And that's then again, that's only looking at our budget numbers, but we can, as we start the 2024 budget, we'll include the tier for that we predict for the end of 2024. And we should know a little bit more now that we're getting into the grant reimbursements, being able to kind of calculate those and budget for those a little bit better. Whether they happen when we think they will, it's hard to say, but we can at least put them in to the bottom line.
Yeah, just projection.
Projection to show where they're going to be at. So, but tier, we do have that loan covenants that we have to keep a minimum tier, and so we're well above that. But that's why the way the state of Washington does some of our requires us to record some stuff as revenues that other places would not record it as revenue. It bumps that tier up. So this is just a graph kind of showing the same thing, information, just to kind of show how it's changed and how the 2 out of 3 year average kind of matches with what we're doing with the actual tiers and stuff. Next thing is DSC, or debt service coverage. This is another loan covenant that we have out there, kind of showing how it changes and looks at things. And again, RUS looks at out the 2 of the last 3 highest year averages. So kind of showing how we're kind of, when you look at that, we're right pretty close with everything. So this is taking what the difference between the tier and debt service coverage is tier only looks at the interest, where debt service coverage looks at both the principal and the interest, the total billed debt service for the year. So that's where the two differ. And then this just a graph kind of showing how the DSE lives compared to the averages, the 2 out of 3 year high average. That's I kind of this threw in. This is one from the original one, just to kind of help show why the bottom dollars, the way we do things. This is our collection days. This is the number of days on average it takes us to collect after we bill. Yes, Ken.
Can you go back to the prior slide and walk us through some of the terminology here?
This, are you talking this one?
Yes.
Okay. So it's I had list the depreciation expense, the interest on long-term debt, the total margins, because you add depreciation interest on long-term debt back into the thing, the less non-cash contribution and aid to construction. We used to record trenching costs and conduit that the customer supplied. In early 2020, reaching out to Mason 3 and stuff. We don't have to, since it's required as part of them getting service, we don't have to record that as revenue. So to try to make things match up a little bit more even, I took those out in 2017 through 2020 when they were there. And then that gets you the total margins. And then you have the total of the margins, the interest on long-term debt, the depreciation, then the total billed service, that's our principal and interest that we received. And then the DSC, the debt service coverage, is the billed debt service divided by the total line to get that debt service. That's how many times we would be able to pay the billed debt service.
Thank you.
And then just looking at the 2 of the last 3 highest years average on the bottom one. So
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then, yeah, just the graph they're showing. Then just wanted to kind of show, just because we show a bottom line doesn't mean that cash is always in the bank. Just wanted to kind of show the average days to collect our accounts receivables from the days that we bill. In 2020, we were averaging, and this is as a combined utility. So this is for all services. In 2020, we were about 26 days. In 2021, it went down to about 24. In 2022, we were up to about 30. And so far in 2023, we're at 19 days on average to collect. So that's about how long it takes us once we bill a customer for them to pay us.
Mhm.
And then going on here, this is just, some of the discussions that we've always had, we've talked about our margins, the bottom line, where and how do we use those funds? That it doesn't just go into the bank. It's being used for other things that doesn't show up on the income statements. So this is kind of showing the principal debt payments, but for electric and water. In 2021, we paid about 3.4 million in principal. And 2022, it's about 3.5, and we've paid already 938,000 in 2023 here. And then on water, it's 625,000 in 21, 650,000 in 22, and we've already paid 499,000 in 23 here. So just we're using those margins that we're making to make these payments. So
Mhm.
that not everything's going into the bank. So one last slide here, and this kind of shows another use of margins. This is our construction work in progress, materials that were purchased, and then general assets. And this is as a combined utility. I didn't separate these out. But in 2021, we spent about $6 million doing work, 6.2 million in 2022. And so far in 2023, we spent about $2.9 million. Materials, we were about 2.5 million in 21, 6.1 million in 22, and we've already spent 1.3 million in 23 here. And then general assets, this is our vehicles, the building purchase, things like that, things that go straight into being capitalized and not going through a work order to a construction work in progress account. We spent about 86,000 in 21, and we spent about 1.8 million in 22, and we haven't really bought any general assets for 23 yet. So that's kind of how we use those total margins. So even though we're showing sometimes $8 million that we're making $8 million, it's getting used and spent on other places that aren't listed on the income statement.
What all things would we expect to see in general assets?
That's vehicles. If we buy in buildings, it could be computer hardware, things that would not go out into the field. These would be just things that we would start capitalizing. Tools are in there, the general assets. So like the building I took out of the construction work in progress and put that into the general assets for 2022.
So as we get into the retail broadband, we would expect to see as we buy bucket trucks or whatever.
If we
number to
bought trucks, vehicles,
escalate.
Yeah, and that's what like 21. That's what it was 86,000 was a couple of vehicles.
I wonder if in our newsletter, we could be a little bit more transparent as to where the money is going, what we're buying. How much is going into construction and replenishing the infrastructure.
Yeah. So that is what the financial update, unless the commissioners have any other questions or anything.
Thank you very much. It keeps getting clearer. There are always a few ambiguities, but I appreciate your efforts to inform us.
Thank you.
So, Mr. O'Donnell, looks like the floor is yours.
Okay, I don't have much to present. We're gonna come back. Share a little tiny bit I do have to present. Look at that. We're gonna come back on the 2nd with some policy changes, some rate changes for the broadband division that we discussed a few meetings ago.
Could you refresh us on what those, a little bit more particular about that?
Yeah, I'll show that in the slides. Hold on 1 second.
We're just gonna be really brief, because we will have a lot more to discuss at a later date. Oh, I gotta use the right keyboard too. Too many devices, okay? We've been over the objectives plenty of times. We're just showing we're still waiting for the final contract language for the USDA Reconnect Award. So we've added that to the funded subtotal column. So we've got $45 million in projects funded, five grant and loan projects to date. That was the first one. The passings and the take rate goals, we have been going slowly, as I mentioned to the commissioners. We haven't had big jumps. We haven't done any outreach yet. We're waiting to resolve the timeline for construction. And we're waiting to see the outcome of the in-between grant application, because it covers the same area as the Olympic Fiber Corridor. It covers areas within that broader area.
Could you elaborate on the in-between grant? What exactly you're talking about there?
That's the grant that we put into the State Broadband Association, State Broadband Office for $6 million to pick up areas previously carved out due to an award given to Starlink for RDOF, which was since withdrawn. And it picks up a couple hundred more customers that otherwise we would have to use adjacent funds charges to cover.
So is Starlink still able to bring service into that area, even though they're not getting the RDOF funding? Or I mean, maybe even another satellite supplier or wireless, fixed wireless? I'm just curious about, are we still competing with somebody in that area?
Yes, we're just not competing with someone who's subsidized by the federal government. Okay. So again, we're creeping up just a little bit. We're at 51% for the Olympic Fiber Corridor, 50% for the Jefferson North area. We're still over in the Discovery Bay area. And some of the policy changes will address how we'll deal with that. Port Townsend Business District we're working on. Okay. So next time, let's see, we've done all that. So we've been working on the rates. We've changed up some of the rate programs that we're going to be bringing to better reflect what we can offer and what we're getting requests for from our ISPs. We're adding an aggregate port rate, and I'll explain all that next time. Direct internet access product. We originally did not want to resell internet to ISPs, but it's been requested, and it's something we will have an abundant supply of. So we have deemed it prudent to be able to offer that product. We're adding the adjacent overage charge to the rate sheet, or we're proposing to. We're going to discuss a possible deposit charge. We have a new very high power outdoor Wi-Fi unit that we have received, and we are going to offer that as one of the rental options for customers. And then we have some more revised, we've revised some of the router rates and revised some of the other higher end rates, the 3 gig, 5 gig, and we're going to bring back a 10 gig because we want people to make use of the fantastic bandwidth that we have. So we'll discuss that at our next meeting.
So adjusted 3G, 5G, and 10G, maybe I missed it. I was reading something, you said that one. We expect those to go higher or lower?
We're going to be lowering the 3 gig and the 5 gig rate is the proposal, and we're going to add a 10. We had originally had it on there. We thought we'd take it away, but we decided we decided to bring it back.
And probably getting out a little far over the skis, but BEAD, what's the process or progress on the BEAD money in that? I know it came up. I listened in on the JBAT meeting. So
yeah, we're finishing a report that will be provided in coordination with Washington State University. It'll be provided to the State Broadband Office, and it will help them better understand the BEAD allocation that will take place at the end of the year. We're many, many months away from a BEAD grant announcement. We are awaiting another Public Works Board round of funding in the next number of months. I'm not exactly sure when. We will be hoping to develop a project for that grant. And that's all I've got.
Let's see, Leo, go ahead, please. You're muted. Leo, go ahead.
So my question is, you just said that you were going to be using this to compete with other providers. Aren't you required not to overbuild and use this to compete your grant funding?
Overbuild question, is that what he said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this relates back to the Starlink issue. Is that right, Leo?
Not necessarily Starlink, but us, or David Brader or whoever, Wave. I mean, so the grants that you applied for, one of the requirements was, I believe, that you do not, it's for the unserved or underserved. You were not allowed to use these funds to compete with those that already meet the requirements.
Yeah, so the requirements are a wired connection that provides better than 25.3 service and doesn't have a construction cost to the customer to get the service. So if you have to pay the internet provider to get the line built to your house, then that's not we wouldn't be competing with that because the grant covers that cost to build.
As building out costs, yeah. As far as actual installation costs, I don't think so. But regardless, I mean, you're using it to overbuild on Marrowstone Wireless. You're using it to overbuild, or on Marrowstone Island, you're using it to overbuild out in Center Valley. I mean, you're using it to build to compete where there's already gigabit fiber to the home.
So is that in-between loan a challengeable loan then?
It's not a loan, it's a
Or
grant.
excuse me, grant, can that be
Yeah,
challenged?
and the challenge period is already passed. So when we applied for those grants, it's during the grant application is the challenge period.
Yeah, but you know that those services, those areas were already served.
Well, I think, I'm sorry, I'm going to jump in here. First of all, I mean, Leo, you need to be way more specific about what you're claiming here. And second of all, the PUD puts out a notice to providers before it can apply, and the state actually makes a determination whether it's met whether the PUD met its requirement to notify other providers in the area, and they wouldn't accept the application unless they reviewed it and approved it.
So actually, we did respond.
So
and
we're just following. I'm sorry. I'm just one last thing. We're just following what the state provides. So if you have a complaint, you can talk to the state.
Okay, that's fine. So I'm just saying though, you guys were informed, and you guys did know, and you guys actually issued the permit for the pole attachments in those areas. So you knew that those areas were serviced when you applied for the grant.
So
Well, you're making allegations that this forum is not designed to.
Those aren't allegations, those are facts.
So I appreciate your comment, Leo, but I don't want to have an extended debate. This is not the place for that.
Where the commissioners are.
Should we move
Please
on?
go ahead.
Yeah, so that's it all. We'll bring back more at the next meeting. And then we have one more item after that.
And who's going to,
That will be me as well. We did not receive any bids for our outdoor network.
Mr. Chair, I just had a comment before we left the broadband thing.
sure, go ahead.
So just based on what Leo is bringing up, I'm not sure what the best forum for this could be, but I could see that there could be public questions about, okay, what is the PUD doing to what extent is there other infrastructure out there, and just making sure we're being really clear about, and I'm not trying to reopen this for more discussion now, I'm just thinking of a future time when we could maybe clarify what we're doing, what we're building, how it's open to everybody, how the federal and state governments are trying to prioritize public monies and getting service available to customers, and how those decisions are being made both by the granting agencies and us, just so that, because the kind of the question that's being thrown out there is, hey, have Jefferson PUD businesses already invested in something, and is now the PUD overbuilding it? And I think it's more complicated. It's not a simple, straightforward answer, and it depends on location probably. So anyway, just a thought for future discussions sometime, so that, you know, Leo or anybody else with questions can ask them, and we can be really clear and make sure that everybody, you know, all our customers understand these issues and how the money is being spent.
If I can make a quick comment, Commissioner, as a Marrowstone resident, with a considerable interest in the availability of broadband on the island, it's my understanding from prior presentations and discussions that we've scrupulously avoided areas on Marrowstone and other places within the county where there really is robust internet service available. Correct me if I'm wrong, Will,
Correct.
but that's, we didn't want to encounter places where we'd be vulnerable to challenges.
Thanks. I didn't want to reopen it. I was just saying for the next time when we talk about that, maybe, Will, to some extent, you could explain the process that we've gone through to try to avoid those things, or, you know, or where there may be issues. So thanks. Didn't want to reopen everything.
Go ahead, please, Will.
Oh, just the last item, it's I guess we're on, if that's okay to move on to business item number 7. You approved us to go out to bid for outdoor network enclosure. This would be the main cabinet, the outdoor cabinet we would use to deliver the internet to Discovery Bay area. We'll use other similar ones in the future. We did not receive any bids. We need to at this point bring it back to the board and ask if the board would rather we rebid the material, which could take 4 weeks before bids could be back, or per the RCW listed, we can go directly solicit 3 to 5 quotes from reputable manufacturers. And that would be staff's preference.
Go ahead.
So was this particular equipment for the 75 some odd people on the Anderson Lake Discovery Bay, or is this part of the Olympic corridor?
It's part of the Olympic fiber corridor to serve up to Gardner and Discovery Bay area. Yeah.
Commissioner Randall.
So I'm looking at the bid. It's a fairly low cost item. You know, it's not $1 million or $800,000. It's fairly low. I'm just guessing that this isn't the kind of thing that catches manufacturers' attention, that they're going to take the time to bid on it. And I'm also presuming there's a limited number of manufacturers that make suitable enclosures, and that what staff is proposing is common sense, that we simply contact them, request some quotes. And hearkening back to, I think when this was brought up the first time, Dan brought up the question, I think, of if we had more units on there for a bid, could we possibly get a better deal? So I guess that's just an option I'm throwing out to you guys, that when you ask for a quote, maybe ask the question of, if these are bought in quantity, might we get a better deal? But I think what you're proposing makes sense.
Mr. Tierce that brought up the economy of scale.
Thank you.
So I'll entertain a motion to authorize the general manager to solicit 3 to 5 quotes for outdoor network enclosures from the open market.
So moved.
I'll second the motion.
Further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. And we've worked our way to the end of our agenda this morning.
Did you want to ask if there was any other public comment? Because we didn't ask along the way on some of this stuff.
Is there any further public comment? Last opportunity before we adjourn. Seeing none. I will declare this meeting adjourned. Enjoy the rest.
Who's got the dog? Bye, everybody.
That was me, sorry. Thanks,
I got
everyone.
seconded there.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.